Tonight, a deadly shooting rampage in Las Vegas. At least 3 people killed at a university. Students told to run, hide, or fight.
We heard loud shouting. Immediate panic. Everyone dropped down to the floor.
The shooter who opened fire also dead. Debt, distress, and missed payments as Canadians rely on credit more than ever. Also, electing a new national chief to unite the Assembly of First Nations after past turmoil. Plus, France's highest honor awarded to a veteran in Saskatchewan. And remembering a man who revolutionized television.
People weren't used to TV shows dealing with issues like racism and sexism.
The legacy of Norman Lear.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening, everyone. The chaos at the Las Vegas University campus erupted just before lunch hour. Authorities racing to the scene at the University of Nevada after reports of an active shooter. Students with their arms in the air escorted to safety. Many of them in final exams and set to go home for the holidays to be with their families.
What happened today is a heinous, unforgivable crime.
And all of it just kilometers away from the deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history that killed 58 people in 2017. Tonight, 3 people are dead. The suspected shooter also dead. CTV's Joy Malbin on the terrifying moments.
It was about midday on campus when shooting broke out at the University of Las Vegas. The school posting a terrifying alert telling students, this is not a test. Run, hide, fight.
I heard a lot of people screaming around me in the student union to get down, hide, shelter in place.
We all walked out with our arms up. When we were walking out, we saw one of the windows had been shot through. Heavily armed SWAT teams moved in, students with their hands up, as police evacuated buildings searching for the shooter, confirming that after a gun battle, he was dead.
We do have one suspect down. Of course, we have no idea on the motive. There are a number of victims that have been transported to area hospitals.
There are victims.
Yes, there are victims.
Eyewitnesses say they heard gunshots in the business building and then across the hall at the student union.
You're calling your family, you're calling people, you're texting your friends like, hey, I love you guys. I don't know what's happening, because he could burst through the door any minute.
This English professor was inside on lockdown.
We heard the clips of semi-automatic weapons just going for what felt like about 30 seconds. It was a very, very disturbing thing to hear.
Frantic parents showed up searching for their kids. The college is home to about 30,000 students near the Las Vegas Strip and not far from the deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history. In 2017, a lone gunman set up a sniper's nest in a hotel, slaughtering 60 people and injuring hundreds more at an outdoor music concert. All this comes at a time when America is on heightened alert because of the war between Israel and Hamas and violence breaking out on school campuses.
I've never seen a time where all the threats, or so many of the threats, are all elevated, all at exactly the same time.
Now, yet another mass shooting, more than 600 this year. Tonight, U.S. President Joe Biden condemned America's gun violence, saying in a statement, this is not normal, and we can never let it become normal. Omar?
All right, Joy, thank you. Police in Texas have arrested a 34-year-old man accused of shooting and killing a string of people, including his parents, in what's being called a random rampage. Gunfire broke out yesterday in a number of locations around Austin and San Antonio. By the time it was over, 6 people were dead and 3 others injured, including 2 police officers. The suspect, Shane Lewis, led officers on a high-speed chase that ended when he crashed his vehicle. A day of remembrance in Montreal today where people paused to mark the 34th anniversary of the massacre at École Polytechnique. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau joined other dignitaries at a vigil where 14 beams of light pierced the sky. One for each of the women murdered in 1989 when a gunman targeted the engineering students because of their gender. The United Nations Secretary General used a rarely used power today, warning of an impending humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. And he urged the organization's most powerful body to demand an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. Here's CTV's Judy Trin.
Tanks and troops have moved into southern Gaza. The Israeli Defense Force says they're fighting Hamas in rubbled streets and shelled out homes. 3 of its soldiers have been killed, but Israel says it's taken out 5 top Hamas commanders, and it continues to scour tunnels to search for hostages.
Our intelligence has been monitoring the situation of our hostages, and I can say with absolute certainty, every minute in Hamas captivity endangers their lives.
138 Israeli hostages are hidden in Gaza. More than 2 million Palestinians have been pushed by Israeli forces to seek refuge in crowded evacuation zones. The UN says there is no safety from airstrikes that continue across the enclave.
Palestinians in Gaza are living in utter, deepening horror. Humanitarian aid is again virtually cut off as fears of widespread disease and hunger spread.
Hospitals that haven't been bombed are near the breaking point. The rooms filled with wounded children. The Hamas-run health authority estimates a third of the more than 16,000 people killed are minors. The impact is felt thousands of miles away. Staff at the University of Waterloo just learned Sophia Ntaya, a former visiting scholar and one of the world's top researchers in astrophysics, had died in Gaza.
The entire family is wiped out completely, evaporated, and that it's hard for us to really comprehend it.
Today, the United Nations Secretary General invoked a rarely used diplomatic measure to alert the Security Council that Gaza was at severe risk of humanitarian collapse and repeated calls for a ceasefire. It was a move that Israel equated to helping Hamas. Omar.
All right, Judy, thank you. Here at home, the Bank of Canada has decided to hold its key interest rate. The rate remains at 5%, the third time in a row the central bank hasn't changed the rate. And it could be a sign efforts to cool inflation are taking hold. CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver on when the rates could start dropping.
Nearly 2 years after the Bank of Canada started hiking interest rates to rein in inflation, analysts say the peak may finally be here.
I think we're probably at the peak. The question is how quickly do rates go down in 2024? I think it's quite likely that they will go down, but when that's going to start, that's not entirely clear.
The bank today held its benchmark rate at 5%, the highest in 22 years. Though many economists say rates will fall next year, it's unlikely they'll return to historic lows.
I think the world of the 1.99 and the 2.25 interest rates, I think that's gone. I don't know that we'll ever get back to that point. But I think high 3s, low 4s is a reasonable rate for mortgages.
But even at that level, some mortgage holders could see monthly payments increase when they go to renew. Next year, more than $186 billion worth of mortgages are set to renew, with another $315 billion in 2025. And RBC estimates payments could rise by more than 30%.
Anyone who has a mortgage coming up for renewal would have been stress tested at around 5 or 5.25%. With where rates are headed at the moment, it's expected that variable and fixed should be around that mark as we get to the latter part of next year.
But the stress test only measures affordability at one point in time. Right now, more consumers are showing signs of stress. While mortgage delinquencies remain well below pandemic levels, the number of missed payments for mortgages and other forms of debt are rising. According to Equifax, 1 in 25 Canadians have missed a debt payment, with total consumer debt at the end of the third quarter rising to around $2.4 trillion, up $81 billion from last year.
That really is an early warning sign of financial stress starting to come through, and we're seeing that more and more on a much wider part of the population.
The Bank of Canada says its rate hikes have dampened spending and price pressures, but it remains concerned about inflation, Omar, and is prepared to raise rates again if necessary.
All right, Annie, thank you. After months of turmoil, the organization representing more than 900,000 people in more than 600 First Nations communities is electing a new leader tonight. Heading into the latest round of voting, Cindy Woodhouse and David Pratt were the frontrunners to become Assembly of First Nations National Chief. The election was triggered by the dramatic ouster of Roseanne Archibald in June over allegations of workplace misconduct. CTV's Donna Sound joins me now from Ottawa. And Donna, it has been quite the night where you are. What's the latest?
Well, the sixth round of voting numbers just came out. Cindy Woodhouse and David Pratt, the two finalists, neither of them have reached the 60% number of votes that they need to become the next national chief. So they've suspended the voting for the night and will begin voting in the morning, tomorrow morning.
All right, Donna Sound in Ottawa, where it has been an eventful evening, and again, voting resuming in the morning. Donna, thank you. A grieving family says BC's healthcare system failed them after the death of a loved one.
I'm so broken.
Kathleen Carmichael's partner was diagnosed with cancer of the esophagus. He never got the chemotherapy he needed, and as his condition deteriorated, he chose medically assisted death, a decision that broke Carmichael.
The oncologist would come and say, well, we're pretty backlogged right now, so hang in there. You know, like, what?
52-year-old Dan Quayle died on November 24th. BC's Premier David Eby called the wait times for cancer treatment unacceptable and said they are being addressed. A community in New Brunswick, which, like so many across the country, is battling the issue of homelessness, is facing questions tonight. It declared a state of emergency over a lack of shelters, but today revoked that declaration. Here's CTV's Sarah Plowman.
Across the road that leads New Brunswick into the U.S., people struggle along a different journey.
I was homeless with these guys until the church found me a camper.
In the small town of St. Stephen, more than 70 people are homeless. There's no shelter, and no spot has been secured to put one. Last weekend, one homeless man, Scott's friend, died.
People are dying, but they don't care.
Local council declared a state of emergency demanding help.
We could go and take a hall, for example, and say, okay, this is our shelter now.
Today, the Minister of Public Safety canceled the declaration, noting it should rarely be used, and said no state of local emergency exists in St. Stephen.
All of these issues are that we're facing today is based on Trudeau policies, leftist agendas that is degrading our society that we're seeing right across the country.
What actions will he and his department take to help the municipality of St. Stephen keep people safe and ensure not another person die?
Across the region, homelessness is growing.
Quite an explosion of folks sleeping rough, sleeping in tents and woods and encampments.
Recently in Halifax, a man was found dead in his tent. In Moncton, a man was rescued from a dumpster that was emptied into a garbage truck. Here, Scott says there are a lot of first-timers.
To be honest, a lot of them think about suicide. I've thought about it. And like I said, where's their help?
The mayor says the minister called him. Next steps are unclear, but on Friday there will be a vigil for the unhoused man who died here, a friend and a father. Omar.
All right, Sarah, thank you. Well, the December chill that usually ushers in the holidays across the prairies hasn't yet materialized. And this year, instead of blizzards, people in southern Manitoba are talking drought. Bureau Chief Jill Makashon on the unseasonable weather.
These days, winter, Peg, just isn't living up to its reputation. 6 degrees, the warmest December day in the city in 24 years. Even warmer in the south, where Morden, Manitoba, reached a high of 9 degrees.
It's 9? Wow, almost double digits.
It's not like I expected, but it's really good.
This weather, which has some people rejoicing, is a problem here.
Well, we live by the town and we've got a well and she dry.
For the first time in its more than 100-year history, Morden has declared a moderate drought in December.
When you're washing clothes, washing dishes, make sure it's a full load. Just conserve your water. Don't leave the tap running while you're brushing your teeth.
The nearby lake that provides water for the city has dropped by nearly 1.5 meters since summer. Above normal temperatures in November, now moving into December as El Nino ushers in warmer air across the prairies.
This year could resemble the El Nino event that happened in 97, 98. So that was a very warm year for us, a year that had more rain than it had snow.
Even rain would be welcome as Agriculture Canada maps show drought conditions across Western Canada, the most severe in southern Alberta and the Northwest Territories, a region that experienced a disastrous wildfire season this past summer. In Morden, the drought alert will stay in effect until the lake levels return to normal.
Yeah, we're hoping snow will be around the corner, but that's all we can do is hope.
This city in such desperate need of snow was instead the provincial hotspot today. But winter is coming and snow is in the forecast, maybe as early as Friday. Jill Makashon, CTV News, Morden, Manitoba.
Coming up.
I don't know whether I deserved it or not, but I got it.
A veteran in Saskatchewan decorated with France's highest honor. A veteran from Saskatchewan has received one of France's highest honors nearly 80 years after serving in the Second World War. The recognition comes as the French government hurries to identify all Canadian veterans eligible for the award before it's too late. Here's CTV's Alison Bamford.
Jim Spence is well known around his local Legion branch as former sergeant at arms, cook, and handyman.
Anything needed fixing in here, replaced or fixing, I did it. That's what those are for.
Now the 97-year-old Second World War veteran has another medal to add to his name.
I would like to honor all the Canadian heroes.
Spence is the most recent Canadian to officially receive France's highest distinction, the Legion of Honor.
I was proud to get it. My family are too.
Spence lied about his age to enlist early. At 17 years old, he joined the Royal Canadian Army Service Corps on Remembrance Day 1943 to transport equipment for the Army overseas.
Our job was you call, we haul.
Spence is one of 55 in Saskatchewan to receive the French medal, joining the nearly 1,200 others across the country. In 2014, the French government began its search for Canada's Second World War veterans in an effort to recognize their contributions to the liberation of France. The award can only be given to those still alive.
It's a kind of race against the time. Veterans you have, but the one who participate in Normandy or helping the French resistance may be a bit more limited.
The local Legion, where Spence has dedicated years of his time, is hoping to help other veterans in the identification process.
Well, I'm just glad that we were able to apply and get the honor for Jim, being that he's one of the last few World War II veterans that we do have in the area.
I don't know whether I deserved it or not, but I got it.
And after serving in France 8 decades ago, it's a moment he's celebrating with his first glass of French champagne. Alison Bamford, CTV News, Estevan.
Still ahead, remembering Norman Lear. Tributes to a legendary producer and primetime pioneer. An inquiry into Britain's handling of the pandemic heard a high-profile apology today.
How sorry I am for the pain and the loss and the suffering
sit down.
Of
please stop.
COVID victims.
Please sit down. Please sit down, or I'm afraid you'll have to leave the hearing room. But we have to ensure.
Former Prime Minister Boris Johnson interrupted by the chair who removed protesters from the hearing. Johnson was forced to resign last year over a series of scandals that violated his own government's lockdown rules. Some dramatic video out of Colombia today of a security operation in the Amazon. They blew up an illegal mining site and equipment in the rainforest. It's part of a joint mission with Brazil aimed at cracking down on illegal gold mines they say are polluting rivers with mercury. Tributes are pouring in for legendary television producer Norman Lear.
Those were the days, and you knew when you were there.
Lear revolutionized TV in the 70s with shows like All in the Family.
1, 2, 3.
that tackle taboo subjects that were rarely discussed in prime time.
People weren't used to TV shows dealing with issues like racism and sexism, but we thought humor was a way into people's hearts.
All in the Family's massive success led to a series of popular spin-offs, including Good Times, The Jeffersons, and Maude. He conquered the big screen as well with The Princess Bride, Fried Green Tomatoes, and Stand By Me. Lear earned numerous honors throughout his long career, including 6 Emmys and the National Medal of Arts. Norman Lear was 101 years old. Incredible career. After the break, a swift honor. We leave you tonight with an accolade her fans know all too well. A global superstar who beat out Barbie and King Charles for Time's Person of the Year. Here's Vanessa Lee.
This was Taylor Swift's year. The Eras Tour is on track to becoming the highest-grossing tour of all time. Night after night, she sells out stadiums, mesmerizing fans with a marathon 45-song set over 3 hours. Her concerts have boosted local economies, generating close to $5 billion in the U.S. alone. And the movie about her tour is the most successful film in concert cinema history. Her legions of fans, known as Swifties, feel a connection to her and the songs she writes. They follow her every move, from the release of each album she re-records so she can own the masters, to her love story. Her romance with football star Travis Kelce has led to a bump in NFL ratings.
She's both the author and the main character of a story that completely engrossed the world. This year, she was everywhere, whether she was on stage with her billion-dollar Eras tour, or in the studio as she continued to re-record her past albums, or even just sitting in the stands watching a football game.
Time says in a divided world, the 12-time Grammy winner has found a way to transcend borders and be a source of light. That bond making her the most streamed artist globally on Spotify.
Taylor Swift's fans really relate to her because she's relatable. She writes about things that they can understand, about breaking up with guys, about dating. She seems like a real person who really, really appreciates her fans.
Swift is the first person to have this recognition for success in the arts. She told the magazine she is the proudest and happiest she's ever felt. Vanessa Lee, CTV News, Montreal.
A global powerhouse. That's a snapshot of this Wednesday for all of us at CTV National News. Thank you for watching, and good night.